Hey everyone, today's guide is about Warframes and their capabilities when it comes to both using them and fighting against them. Along with their base shield, armor, and health stats, which each have their individual values adjusted to suit Conclave, Warframes also have a mobility stat. The mobility stat particularly affects the velocity of rolls and bullet jumps, and has a negative correlation with the Warframe's effective hit points, also known as EHP. So a higher EHP usually means a lower mobility, and vice versa. That correlation is more of a general trend though, rather than a constant. Outliers can be seen with Warframes such as Limbo Prime and Nidus, which still somewhat suit that correlation, but have different ratios than what you would expect. Warframes also have their sprint speed stat, which varies in the same way that it does in PvE. And their energy capacity is always 100 at base. That can be changed with mods though. In Conclave, most Warframes have a passive. Many of those passives are the same as in PvE, like how Zephyr falls slowly and has increased agility in the air. Other frames have a different passive. In Oberon's case, that's an immunity to impairs, which is a status effect which prevents the use of jumps while on the ground. Then of course, every Warframe has their 4 abilities. Those abilities all have their stats adjusted for PvE, and some even have different functionality overall. For example, while Volt Speed has only adjusted stats, Banshee Silence can prevent opponents from casting abilities while in range. On top of that are the mods. Warframes and Conclave have enough mod options to make us a whole separate guide about. And because I don't want modding to take over this video, I'll stick to mentioning some of the important categories. First, the mods which modify EHP and mobility are really important. And as I said, EHP and mobility generally have a negative correlation in base stats, and that correlation mostly stays true for modding. You can sacrifice your health or shields for mobility, or do the opposite, sacrificing your mobility for health or shields. There are also mods which can sacrifice mobility for difference of damage reduction, a mod which sacrifices shields for sprint speed, and even a mod which completely removes passive energy regeneration in exchange for mobility. There are other mods which alter stats in similar ways, but let's move on to ability augments. These augments work just like PvE augments. A few of them are even the exact same mods which you can use in PvE, like Mesa's Waltz and Iron Shrapnel. Others, like Deceptive Bond, which allows Loki and his decoy to share damage taken, are unique to Conclave. That may seem like an overwhelming set of factors to consider, but there are various ways to simplify and narrow them down to what you may need. For example, you might want a frame with a certain amount of EHP. There is a limit to how much you can boost the EHP, being 30 shields or 25 health, which you can add some of the various forms of damage reduction to, but all those damage reductions are conditionally applied, such as the one mod which reduces damage during rolls, and only during rolls. Any requirement or preference you may have, whether it be EHP, mobility, weapon synergy, or others, would potentially eliminate some amount of frames from being preferable choices. What you might be looking for might not be an option, so you might be looking for example, a particular balance of EHP and mobility, and there may not be a frame which can innately provide that. But you should know how to adjust your expectations and such accordingly, and find the closest thing to what you would consider ideal. So whether you're choosing a frame to base a loadout around, choosing a frame to suit a specific synergy, or whatever, that's everything important to know about your deciding factors. I'd love to tell you all about how to use your frames, but that does heavily vary based on the specific frame you're deciding to use, and even more so different mods and weapons to go with that frame, to the point where I'd only be able to really tell you basic controls if I want to tell you stuff that would apply to every frame. So be sure to look out for guides on other subjects which may interest you, such as guides on specific frames that I might make and such. And to also be sure to experiment with what you do have and what you're interested in. And then you can, combine that knowledge, adapt it, and, eventually turn into something which will really help you to improve your gameplay. You might be surprised at the various dynamics you encounter, which is a subject which I could make multiple guide videos about. With that said though, I want to talk about some of the most relevant ones to this subject. Mobility and EHP are an interesting pair because people often disregard one or the other. Mobility tends to be overly favored by those who see too much value in the accuracy loss of opponents, while EHP is often overly valued by those who boil combat down to kill time comparisons too directly. Generally speaking, the way it works is that higher EHP players have an innate advantage due to kill time differences, but higher mobility players have more options to play around that, like for example, closing in with a shotgun for high DPS to counteract kill time, which the higher EHP player would have, with otherwise similar DPS weapons, which would presumably be similar range in most cases. That's still a rather broad generalization though, and I could probably make, another guide video about that as well. Moving on, there are many shared traits between abilities which are important to consider, both because of how likely you are to face against them and how likely they are to be available options on whatever Warframes you may have chosen. There are one-handed abilities, for example, which can generally be used without interrupting any other actions, so abilities such as Smite, Shock, and Vex Armor can all be used with no interruption to other actions, including shooting, although there are some exceptions. There's also the typical sort of radial damage ability, which has many variations, but it will generally cost 75 or 100 energy at base, dealing a large amount of damage in an area centered on the caster. Such abilities include Crush, Miasma, Radial Javelin, and Stomp. One of the notable things about these abilities is that they're generally considered to be the strongest abilities and the easiest to get kills with. They are great tools to have and to use, although it is worth being mindful of both the energy cost and the casting delays. Used well, they can get multiple kills per cast with relative ease. However, using them poorly is a loss of 75 to 100 energy for little to no reward, often leaving you vulnerable in the casting animations for the rest of the players to deal damage to without retaliation. Getting 1 or 2 kills with them is arguably a waste as well, because depending on your skills, you can potentially get more kills more easily and/or just more kills. With other abilities such as Wolf's Electric Shield, as opposed to its discharge. That will still be up for you to decide though based on your skill sets. The abilities can also inflict a variety of status effects and deal damage to various types, which allow for various types and degrees of synergies. Abilities like Soul Punch, Tailwind, and Ripline, and also some others, can all knock down opponents, leaving them briefly vulnerable. Almost every status effect can be inflicted through an ability of some sort, and you can imagine the various uses each of those have. There's also the damage which many abilities have, and any experienced Warframe player would know that different damage types are suited to different tasks. Soul Punch's impact damage is best suited for starting fights where it will generally be dealing damage to shields, getting a slight bonus, but is especially good with the knockdown it inflicts. That differs from an ability like Iron Skin with the Iron Sapphire augment, dealing puncturing damage which is best against armor. Again, I have generalized a lot because there are many subjects in this video which could be made into their own whole guide videos, and so if I were to talk about them in more detail, this video would be incredibly long. But as always, there will be more guides on the way, and many of those are in-depth versions of things that I've touched on in this guide. So I do hope you've enjoyed this video, and more importantly, I hope you found it helpful. So that's all for now. See ya.